It started with something so small that at first I barely noticed it. The shower in my apartment had always been a little temperamental, the kind of cheap bathroom setup where the water took its sweet time to warm up and the drain had a habit of gurgling long after you turned the water off. I moved into this place in early autumn, into a converted older building where the pipes seemed older than most of the residents. The bathroom smelled faintly of bleach when I first arrived, and the landlord warned me the drains ran a little slow sometimes. I didn't think much of it. Slow drains weren't exactly uncommon in old buildings. For the first week, everything seemed normal. My routine was simple. Get home from work, shower, eat, try to ignore the occasional scratching sound in the walls that I told myself were just mice. Then, on the 8th night, I heard it. I'd been standing under the hot water for a good 15 minutes, steam curling up toward the cracked ceiling paint, when a faint tapping rose from somewhere beneath my feet. It was subtle at first, like the sound of water droplets hitting metal. I assumed it was just water dripping somewhere deeper in the pipe. But then it changed. It became rhythmic. Not random, not scattered. 3 short taps, then a pause. Then 3 more. Like someone was knocking on the underside of the drain. I froze, shampoo still in my hair, listening. The sound seemed to travel upward, vibrating faintly through the metal of the shower drain cover. My first thought was that maybe a neighbor's pipes were rattling, but I remembered there was no apartment directly below mine. Just an empty, locked-off basement the landlord said was used for storage. I shook the feeling off and finished my shower quickly. But even after I stepped out, wrapped in a towel, I could swear I heard one more faint tap from the drain, like a final, deliberate goodbye. The next night it happened again. Same rhythm, same deliberate spacing between taps. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. This time, I crouched down in the shower, pressing my ear near the drain. The water was still running, splashing over my shoulders, but beneath it I could make out something else, something faint, like a whisper muffled by layers of water and metal. I couldn't understand it. It might have been words, or it might have been my brain trying to force meaning onto the noise, but it made my skin crawl all the same. I got out and inspected the drain more closely. It was just the standard metal cover screwed into place, tarnished and slightly bent in the center. I tried unscrewing it, but it wouldn't budge, almost like it had been welded in place. That night, I had trouble sleeping. I kept picturing someone in the basement, tapping on the pipes, speaking into them. I told myself that was impossible. You couldn't just talk into a drain and have someone upstairs hear you clearly. Still, the thought lingered. On the 4th night, escalated. I was halfway through my shower when the tapping began again, but this time it was faster, more insistent. Then it stopped, and instead I heard what I can only describe as scratching. Long, slow drags of something hard against the metal beneath my feet. Not frantic, not hurried, just slow enough to feel deliberate. The sound moved in small circles, then stopped dead. I turned off the water and just stood there, dripping, staring down at the drain. Steam clung to the walls. The only sound was the faint patter of leftover drops falling from a shower head. Then, out of nowhere, there was one loud, sharp tap from below, so forceful it seemed to echo in the small bathroom. I stepped out without drying off, grabbed my phone, and called the landlord. He didn't pick up. I left a message saying there was something wrong with the plumbing, maybe an animal in the pipes. He didn't call me back. 2 days later, when it happened again, I decided to record it. I set my phone down on the edge of the tub, hit record, and let the shower run. At first, all I got was the sound of rushing water. Then, faintly, the taps started 3 short, deliberate knocks just like before. But in the playback, there was something I hadn't noticed while standing there. Between the taps, there was breathing. Slow, steady, human breathing. And at the very end of the recording, just before the sound cut off, there was a single quiet word. It said my name. After the recording, I couldn't bring myself to shower alone. I tried using the gym showers, my friend apartments, anything to avoid the small, steaming room where the taps had begun speaking my name. Every night, I lay awake, imagining what could be living beneath the metal drain, imagining what might be capable of hearing me through the water. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was rats. Maybe it was an old vent that was hollowing in on itself. Maybe if I ignored it, it would go away. But the taps didn't go away. By the 5th night, I had started to notice patterns. It was no longer just 3 taps and a pause. Sometimes it would respond to my movements. If I tapped my foot on the tub, the taps would tap back, slow, deliberate, almost like it was counting. I told myself it was coincidence. The mind is excellent at finding patterns where none exist. But the next night I tried again. I tapped twice. Then I stopped. The drain responded with exactly 2 taps in return. I froze. I was shaking, but I tried one more experiment. I whispered, "Hello." A faint pause. Then 3 taps. I whispered again, "Are you down there?" This time it was 2 taps. Then a long pause, almost as if listening. Then 1 sharp tap. I didn't want to be down there anymore, not physically, but mentally I couldn't look away. The drain had become a mirror for my own curiosity, and it was responding. I stopped showering entirely that week. My skin became pale, my hair greasy. I skipped work one morning because I couldn't leave the apartment, couldn't tear myself from the oppressive thought of what might be waiting under my feet. The taps grew louder at night. 3 taps, 2 taps, 1 long scrape along the metal. Breathing. And sometimes, though I tried to deny it, I thought I heard faint words between the taps. Words I didn't recognize at first, but then I realized. They were my own words repeated back to me. It happened on the 8th night. I had decided to face it, finally. I filled the tub halfway, just water, no shower running, and set my phone recording again. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold the edge of the tub. Then the tapping started. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Then a dragging sound beneath the drain, like fingernails scraping the metal from the inside. My stomach dropped, and I knelt, pressing my ear against the water. And I heard it clearly, not faintly, not muffled by water. It whispered my full name. Then it said something else, something that froze my blood. "Come closer." I jumped back. My phone had slipped into the water, soaking the bottom, but I didn't care. My apartment felt suddenly colder, as if the walls themselves had drawn closer. I didn't sleep that night, sitting fully clothed on the couch, staring at the bathroom door. After that night, everything changed. The taps no longer waited for me to start the shower. They began at random times. At first in the middle of the day, faint and cautious. Then at night, relentless so that I couldn't ignore it. Sometimes when I walked past the bathroom, I would hear slow, dragging sounds beneath the door. Sometimes faint scratching. Sometimes the taps seemed to count my steps, matching each footfall with a tap. I started seeing scratches on the drain cover when I inspected it. Small, shallow lines that hadn't been there before. At first I thought it was rust or dirt. Then I realized they were in the shape of fingers. And the smell started. Faint at first, metallic, wet like iron and dirt. but it grew stronger with every night, a lingering scent in the bathroom air that made my stomach churn. By the end of the second week, I had stopped leaving the apartment after dark. The taps followed me in my dreams, sometimes whispering, sometimes scratching, sometimes tapping to my heartbeat. I couldn't escape them. I tried talking to friends about it, but no one believed me. Some laughed, some suggested therapy. Some said it was just stress. But stress doesn't explain what happened the night I woke to find my bedroom floor wet, small claw-like scratches across the tiles, leading directly from the bathroom door. I know what I saw, and I know it wasn't my imagination. By the third week, I had stopped sleeping in my bed entirely. I moved a mattress into the living room and kept every light on, but the taps never stopped. Day or night, I could hear the faint rhythm beneath the shower drain. Sometimes 3 taps, sometimes 5, sometimes dragging sounds like something moving against the metal. And always the faint metallic tang in the air, the smell of wet iron that clung to my skin long after I tried to wash it away. I realized then that the drain was no longer just responding. It was observing. Every step I took in the bathroom was counted. Every footfall matched. And if I dared to speak, even in my own apartment, the taps replied, sometimes slowly, sometimes instantly, sometimes in a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. One night, desperate to prove to myself that it wasn't real, I locked my apartment door behind me and decided to face it. I set up my phone recorder again, and this time I turned on the shower, letting it run hot and steaming. I crouched on the tile, ear pressed against the water, and waited. It started, as usual, with 3 taps, then dragging, then scratching, then a sound I had never heard before, a faint slip and slide beneath the metal. Something small, hard, and clawed moving slowly, carefully, like it was testing the boundaries of the drain. And then something emerged. At first, it was just a shadow beneath the drain cover, a distortion in the metal. Then a hand, wet, pale, bloated, nails blackened and curved. It pressed against the underside of the drain, leaving streaks in the shallow water trapped above it. My mind screamed at me to step back, to flee, but my body was frozen. I could hear it tapping now in a deliberate rhythm, faster than before, almost frantic. And then it stopped. From beneath the water, a voice whispered, not my name this time, but a question. Why are you here? I couldn't answer. I wanted to run, but I was rooted in place. And then the scratching began again, louder, sharper. Something was moving under the water, wriggling, testing. The nails scraped against the metal grate, making a sound that felt like it was inside my skull. After that night, things became worse. The taps no longer confined themselves to the shower. I could hear faint scratches on the bathroom tiles, on the walls, and even on the ceiling. Sometimes it was as if the tapping followed me. I would walk past the bathroom, and the drain would scratch in time with my steps. Objects began to shift slightly. My shampoo bottle, my towels, small items moved just a few inches as if someone had brushed past them. I would tell myself it was wind, vibration, fatigue, anything to rationalize it, but deep down I knew the taps were no longer just sound. They were presence. I tried to capture it on video, but every recording device failed. Cameras froze, audio clipped in impossible ways, files corrupted, until all I had left were audio files with strange distortions. Between the taps, faint human breathing, low and deliberate, and sometimes a voice whispering from beneath the metal, "Come down." I couldn't bring myself to listen to the recordings more than once. The sound would follow me, lingering in my ears, making my skin crawl. I started to dream about it. Dreams where I was trapped in the shower, water rising over my head, and nails scraping, dragging, tapping in time with my heartbeat. By the end of the third week, I was alone almost entirely. I had stopped inviting friends over, stopped going out after dark. The apartment felt like a trap. Even turning off the water didn't stop it. The taps came without water, tapping on the metal drain cover as if calling my attention. I started noticing other things too, faint movements in the reflection of the shower glass, shadows that didn't match anything in the room, whispers just beyond comprehension. It was no longer a drain problem. It was inside me. The taps weren't just sounds. They were intelligence. Waiting. Patient. Malicious. By the fourth week, I was convinced the drain wasn't just haunted. It was alive. I didn't shower. I barely walked into the bathroom. Every time I passed the door, I could hear the soft, slow tapping beneath the drain, nails scraping, dragging, counting my steps, measuring my fear. At night, I could hear it even with the door closed and the lights on. Sometimes it came from the walls, faintly echoing, like the water pipes themselves were whispering. I stopped trying to rationalize it. There was no rodent, no ventilation issue, no plumbing anomaly. Something else had claimed the bathroom as its domain. It was late one night when it happened. I was lying in the living room, trying to read under a lamp, when I heard scratching across the tiles. At first I thought it was a rat. Then I realized the sound was coming up from the shower drain. I froze. Then a sharp, deliberate tap, 3 knocks, followed by a dragging sound that made the floor vibrate under my feet. Before I could move, the nails burst through the metal grate. One hand, then another, pale and bloated, curling fingers reaching through the holes of the drain cover. I stumbled backward, tripping over the rug, barely avoiding the grasping hands. The taps didn't stop. They counted my movements, followed me around the living room. Every step, every breath, they were there, invisible yet tangible. I contacted the landlord, desperate for help. He reluctantly agreed to open the crawl space under the building, the old maintenance area connected to the pipes. He warned me again, stay out of there. You don't know what's down there. But I had no choice. I needed to see what was beneath the drain. I descended into the crawl space, flashlight in hand. The air was thick with mold and something metallic. Pipes ran overhead, dripping water into shallow puddles on the concrete floor. And in the distance, I heard it, faint tapping, just under the metal pipes. I followed it, heart hammering, flashlight trembling in my hands. The taps grew louder, faster, as if aware I was coming. Then the scratching began, slow, deliberate, moving toward me through the pipes. Beneath the crawl space, I found the source. Not a pipe, not a rat, not plumbing, a small hole in the concrete floor, just large enough for fingers to emerge. Nails scratched the edge, then a pale, bloated hand reached out. It was intelligent. The tapping was deliberate enough to form a rhythm, a communication. I could feel it thinking. And then, as I stepped closer, it reacted. The hand withdrew. A second hand emerged, then a shoulder, then a figure, not fully formed, a blur of wet flesh and shadow, emerging slowly from the hole beneath the floor. I turned and ran. The crawl space was small, tight, every step echoing with taps and scratches. Behind me, something was moving, something following through the pipes. I barely made it up the stairs, slamming the hatch shut. That night, the taps didn't stop. They followed me through the apartment, coming from every drain, every pipe, every vent. The bathroom door no longer offered protection. The nails scraped beneath the metal, counting, observing, waiting. I realized then, it had learned. It knew me. It was patient, and I couldn't escape it. After the crawl space incident, I realized I could no longer ignore it. The taps weren't just confined to the bathroom anymore. They followed me everywhere, echoing from the kitchen sink, the heating pipes, even the vents. Sometimes when I walked past the bathroom door, I could hear slow scraping along the tiles and faint dripping sounds that weren't from any running water. The apartment had turned hostile. Every object seemed to shift slightly when I wasn't looking. Towels fell, bottles rolled, doors creaked open. The taps responded to everything, my movements, my breathing, my heartbeat. Sometimes it was as if the very apartment had become an extension of the drain. I started trying to communicate with it, desperate to understand. I would tap my fingers on the floor or the edge of the tub, and it would answer. The rhythm became increasingly complex. Sometimes I swore it was counting days. Other times, it seemed to mimic my thoughts, tapping back in patterns that matched my pulse. Then it started forming words. Not full sentences, but fragments. Scratches beneath the tiles that sounded almost like syllables. Whispers that I could almost make out if I held my ear close to the drain. Sometimes it would just whisper my fears back to me. Sometimes it would whisper names, people I knew, people I had forgotten. It had learned more than I imagined. I didn't sleep. Not really. The taps followed me into dreams, counting every beat of my heart. In my nightmares, the water rose in the shower, cold and suffocating, and the nails scraped at the drain cover, reaching, pulling. I would wake up drenched in sweat, convinced I could hear the scraping from the bathroom, even though the apartment was silent. I stopped eating properly. I stopped leaving the apartment. I spent hours crouched near the bathroom door, trying to anticipate the taps, trying to measure the rhythm, trying to survive. It finally happened one night when I had no choice but to shower. I had ignored it too long, and I knew it would only grow bolder. I stepped into the tub, shaking, and turned on the water. Immediately, the taps started faster than ever, a relentless barrage. 3, 5, 2, pause, scrape, scrape. And then I felt it. Beneath the water, beneath the drain, something was moving. The taps became violent, almost desperate. The water sloshed and gurgled. A shadow moved beneath the metal. A hand erupted through the drain, pale, bloated, nails blackened and curved. I screamed, stepping back, but the tiles were slick. Another hand followed, scratching, scraping. The figure pushed upward, trying to emerge. I grabbed a towel and slammed it over the drain, pressing down, but it was too strong. The nails dug into the metal, dragging, tapping, counting. I can't describe the terror in words. Every sense was consumed by it. The smell of wet iron, the scraping beneath the tiles, the whispers, the counting, the feeling that it knew me. I realized then that I couldn't fight it. I couldn't reason with it. I couldn't run. It wanted something from me, and I didn't know what. I spent the next days barely moving, sitting outside the bathroom, barely breathing, trying to anticipate its movements. The taps were relentless, never stopping, never giving me a moment of peace. They followed me into every room, into every thought, into every heartbeat. I finally understood. It was patient. It had no need to hurry. It didn't want to hurt me yet. It wanted to teach me, to break me, to make me part of its world beneath the tiles. Every tap, every scratch, every whisper was a lesson. Accounting, a warning, and I was trapped. The drain was no longer just metal and water. It was a gateway. I could hear it moving beneath the floor, always counting, always learning, always waiting. I didn't know how long I could survive the nights. I didn't know if I would wake again. But I knew one thing. Whatever was under that drain was patient, and it would not stop until it had me. By the 5th week, I no longer had the strength to fight it. Sleep was impossible. Eating was minimal. The taps followed me constantly, counting, scratching, whispering. I could feel it beneath the tiles, beneath the water, beneath the very foundation of the apartment. It had learned every habit, every weakness, every fear. I knew it was patient. It had all the time in the world. And I knew that one night it would decide I was ready. It happened 2 nights ago. I was sitting on the edge of the bathtub, phone recording, trying to document the taps one last time. I had set the water to run slowly, just enough to mask the sounds of my own breathing. The taps started immediately, rapid, erratic, violent. Scratching, dragging, counting. And then I felt it, a pressure beneath the water, something large moving, something that shouldn't exist in the pipes. The drain cover lifted slightly on its own. I froze. The taps became frantic, pounding, scraping, tapping in a rhythm I didn't understand but felt in my chest. I tried to step back. My foot slipped on the wet tiles. A hand burst through the drain, bloated, pale, nails blackened and curved. Another followed. The hands gripped the sides of the tub, pressing, dragging, pulling. I screamed and scrambled backward, but the water was rising faster than I expected, spilling over the edge. And then it climbed out. Not fully human, not fully animal. A twisted, writhing mass of pale flesh, nails scratching, eyes faintly glowing beneath a wet, bloated face. It made no sound except the taps, counting, clicking, dragging, whispering. I stumbled back against the wall. The figure lunged for me. I could feel the pressure, the coldness, the smell of wet iron and rot. Every instinct screamed to flee, but there was nowhere to go. It paused for a moment, tilting its head as if studying me. Then it scraped its nails along the tub, sending vibrations through the floor. 3 taps, 2 taps, 1 long dragging scrape. I realized then that it wasn't just a creature. It was intelligent. It had been learning from me all these weeks, observing my fear, waiting for the perfect moment. And now it had me exactly where it wanted. I grabbed the phone, screaming, trying to hit it, trying to call for help. But the taps were everywhere. The phone's speaker emitted them. The pipes reverberated them. The very walls pulsed with their rhythm. My own heartbeat matched the tapping now, and I realized it had synchronized with me. Every thump in my chest was mirrored in the taps, a countdown to something I couldn't escape. The hands reached for me again. I struggled, but it was impossible. The figure's movements were unnatural, fluid, patient, and terrifyingly precise. I felt cold water and slime against my skin. I felt the pressure of something moving beneath the tiles, beneath the walls, and finally into my body, into my chest, into my mind. I don't remember how long I struggled. Hours? Minutes? I only know that the taps never stopped. They counted every second, every breath, every heartbeat. I felt myself being pulled toward the drain, drawn, absorbed, until I was part of it. Now, I can hear it everywhere, beneath the bathroom, beneath the apartment, beneath the city. Taps counting, scratching, dragging, whispering. It waits, patient, knowing, intelligent, and I know it will find someone else. I am beneath the drain now. I top. I scrape. I count, always counting, and it waits for the next person to make the mistake of hearing the taps and stepping too close.